Alrighty. Hello everyone and welcome to Handmade Hero. Sure, we code a complete game live on stream. I have no idea what we want to do today. To be completely honest with you, I'm not sure. We probably, I would guess, should continue our... Why did that not... I don't even know how the new 4Coder thing works with builds. I've never been able to figure it out. It's extremely confusing to me. I have a project, and I thought it would build when I tried to hit build, but it doesn't build, and I don't really know why. And I haven't really bothered to figure it out. So if you just start by being in a file that's part of the project and you hit build, it does build? I don't know. I don't know. Only Alan or Ryan could tell me the answer to those questions. Well, that's not true. We could go find out ourselves if we were so motivated. I'm not. So we're just going to say that's what it does. And then we're going to go in here and run the game. Now, I'm assuming what I would want to do today is work on the pressure plates now. The other thing we might want to do is work on combat, because at this point, we're kind of just talking about things that are involved in making gameplay stuff happen, like in the dungeon areas and whatever. And another thing that I think I probably want to do is have a convenient shortcut switch that I can use in order to start myself off like in the dungeon. Because I don't really want to have to hop here every time when I'm testing things. We have hot code reloading, so I can just like reload code when we're standing around here. But the problem is that reloading code is not really going to help when we're looking at like generator stuff, you know. So to a first approximation, we're going to need something that gets us started faster. So I guess what I would say is we have a couple things we would probably want to do there, and, you know, I don't have a strong opinion on any of them. So I think maybe the first thing we should start with is before we start working on tiles again, right, we probably want to... Ooh, that was kind of interesting. It seems like it... is that because it doesn't know what room it's in if you go down low enough? The camera kind of looks like it went up higher to above the... The camera like went upward, but I don't know why the camera went upward. It's interesting. Probably because it doesn't have a room at that point. It's outside any room geometry. Anyway, that doesn't really matter. We don't care about that at the moment. But the point is, so I should probably just start by doing a quick startup thing so that we can make sure that we just start in like a dungeon room. Because if we don't just start in the dungeon room all the time, we're going to waste all our time like hopping down here. Because we want to be able to quickly see like when we work on the room generation stuff or anything else like that, we want to be able to make sure that we can quickly go ahead and get ourselves like resituated, right? We want to be able to like restart right in an area that's relevant. And you know, hot code reloading can't really help us if it's world generation stuff, because when we hot reload code, we keep the world the way it is, right? We could add a key that like destroys the world and creates a new one. But again, that would pop us back to the beginning of the game. So like, for example, if I did that, we've created a new world now, but the problem is we're back at start. So we still have to hop all the way down, right? So that seems to me like something we should probably work on, right? Like something where we're actually going to have an easy time showing up in a place that actually makes sense. And, you know, I assume that we could just make it so that the world generator just skips the generation of the orphanage altogether. That's probably fine. Because I would assume that, like, you know, we don't need the orphanage to get generated when we're just working on the dungeon area. So for example, in here, well, actually, you know what? We don't have to skip it doesn't even matter. We can still generate the orphanage. We'll just place the hero somewhere else. So you can see here, like, we do a dungeon, create dungeon, like that. And if we look at the dungeon data, you can see that there's an entrance room. So I think that if we just did this, where we said, okay, there's a start room equals dungeon entrance room, we can just do that, and now it will start us in right where the dungeon is, I think, right? I take it back. That does not look like it worked at all. Oh. Never mind. That is not what that is. That is the room we start laying out at. That's cool. So that started laying out at a totally different place, but it still placed us in the same place. That's interesting. Okay. So actually, it's this that we care about, and this places the camera there, which I guess is what we care about. You can see us even, we had one in here for placing ourselves in the forest, so I guess we can just do this, the same thing, and just say, all right, there's a volume here that we're going to place the hero at, and off we go. There we go. So this starts us off in this room here, the entrance room that we're talking about, which seems good. I feel like the entrance room shouldn't have a door, because it's an entranceway, so I don't know that you should have to hop on a door to get in there. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, I don't know. But that's something to think about. But okay, so now that we're starting here, we got a lot of stuff we can do now. So the first thing I'd like to do, probably just looking at it, is we need to actually place these tiles in actually interesting patterns in the rooms, right? So when you look at one of these things, the idea is that those tiles want to be placed in the room, and they want to be placed in some kind of gameplay relevant way, right? So, like, to be honest, I don't really think that they want to be placed next to each other even. Like, they don't really want to be contiguous like this. I think they more want to be placed kind of randomly throughout the room, using some kind of a, like, you know, scattering. Because the idea is you have to hop on the various tiles to open up the next door, and we don't really want them to be all next to each other, probably. I mean, maybe sometimes they can be next to each other, but I don't know that... Yeah, you know, that's a pretty tough one. I don't really know. Maybe they do kind of want to be more like in a pattern. Because I could see that being kind of fun. Like, you have to kind of hop through the pattern. So all right. So yeah, I guess I would say maybe I take it back. Maybe they are supposed to be in a pattern, and then maybe, like, how that works is we try to place the pattern in the room like we're doing now. We just need the thing we don't have is right now the pattern is, like, always, right, placed it searches. You can imagine it starting up here, right? Like, if you look at what's going on in here, you can kind of see, like, okay, we start at the upper corner of a room, right? And we just go until camera. It'd be nice if there was some way to, like, not have the camera do that thing. To have the camera not show these upper rooms when we're in debug mode. They automatically fade out in gameplay, but they don't in debug mode. Anyway, point being, what you can kind of see here, if we look at these rooms, is that you get it always puts it in the top corner. And the reason for that is just that it just starts in the top corner and then keeps trying until it can find a place to put it. And since it pretty much can always put it in the top corner, like, there's no reason it will ever fail to put it in that top corner. It just always ends up in the top corner. So even once we make kind of more interesting patterns, it will be, like, really heavily biased towards the top corner of the room if we don't do something about that. Now, one question is, do we want it to actually be biased? Like, do we want it to just always place the pattern, like, in the middle of the room and then keep trying till it can find a place to put it that, like, spirals outward from the middle of the room, for example? Because we could do something like that. And, you know, maybe that's what we want. I don't know. I would say maybe let's try that, just because I can't really think of any reason not to. Let's take a look. So if we look at one of these like pending entity things, and you know, this might be an opportunity for us to do one of the things that I was thinking we wanted to do, right? Which was create a thing that houses these, like bundles them up into bundles, basically. So that rather than getting gen entities back from things, you get like a gen entity group, right? Like this thing. You get one of these back for everything. So everything is an entity group, and then the thing that was the entity group is actually a group of groups, right? Or a list of groups. Because we now are pretty much always placing sort of templates of things that have multiple entities in them, and it was kind of a pain in the butt to use this thing. So I think we might want to do that as well, and this would give us an opportunity to do that. Because you would end up with something more like this, where you say like, all right, there's a gen entity group. You have, you know, and it could be like gen entity list, maybe is a better way to do it. Or pattern, you know, something like that. And you have that. And these are actually what you stack up. So instead of this, it's actually a pattern, you know? And that way you would just say these we build. The pattern itself could store some information, like about, you know, where it wants to start. So, you know, there would be something like a starting, you know, like a flag that says where in the room you want to start, roughly. It could even be like a UV, kind of like a bias sort of a thing. It could be something like, you know, start P bias, where we basically say, or start P UV or something like that, where we say, okay, given the room, 0, 0, you know, 0.5, 0.5 would be the center, 0, 0 be upper or lower left corner or something, you know, whatever it is. And we would just say that's going to be our, the way in which we go about laying these things out. They're gonna follow that pattern, right? So if we assume that's the case, you could see making these entity patterns and saying I want to place this starting in the middle, starting in the upper corner, starting in the other corner, you know, something like that. And the rest of this would just remain the same. You know, we wouldn't have to do anything else, I don't think. And so maybe that works okay. And the only problem that I have here is just that, like, you sort of have a boundary. Like, this template sort of has a size to it. And it's a little confusing because if you allow the thing to be a bit flexible with how the pattern is generated, it's tough to sort of see how it gets placed. If the pattern is always rigid, which I'll be honest, seems like it might need to be, so you can sort of see maybe why I'm not sure what to do about this. And this may just be a case of us overcomplicating things. Like, maybe I just need to change this stuff. And so instead of doing this, where you do, like, it could be that I've done this one level too low, right? So maybe the answer is, look, we should not have entity creators. That was just a bad idea. What we have is pattern creators, and pattern creators are just custom written, right? Because the more I think about this, I'm just like, how are we ever going to get this to work? We'd basically have to encode so much smarts into this thing, You know what I mean? That it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense how that's ever going to work, you know? So I feel like what we want is, instead of doing what we did here, where we're sort of saying, look, let's buffer up all the stuff that's going to get created and then have this thing try to create it in the room, maybe what we'd rather do is say, all right, for every thing that's a collection, that's a call into a function that knows how to create that thing, and it does its own probing to figure out like where to put stuff, you know? And the reason I say that is just because thinking about how complicated this would get once you're trying to do gameplay stuff, you have so many metrics you might want to take account in there. It just feels like we're going to have to create our own kind of hacky code to do some of these things, because there's not going to be like a good formal way to describe what we're trying to accomplish there without just making a whole programming language inside this pattern generator thing, you know? So it kind of seems to me like maybe this was just a bad idea. So maybe that's the goal for today. Convert this to something that does not work that way, right? So convert this into something where instead of gen entity group and this being gen entity, I mean, maybe we leave these names because that's still fine. But maybe what we do here instead is this gen entity thing actually just has, it has a call that's like pattern creator. And it takes all that, it takes like what kind of pattern you were trying to create using a bunch of parameters or something, and then it creates that. And this stuff doesn't really exist anymore. So, you know, if we look at all the places that are actually doing this, right? So if we then go into the room generator where this stuff is actually called, and you can see, like, there's a couple places where, you know, we're doing sort of generating trees and stuff like this, right? These would just turn into calls directly to those things. So, like, add inanimate or whatever would just get called directly, and that's better. That seems just better, period, right? And then this stuff here, where we're generating things, the door stuff would just call add obstacle, but then this thing where we loop through the group, this, rather than calling find place to put entity group, would just call the function. It just straight up calls the function right there. You know what I'm saying? So let's try that. That seems like what I want. That seems like what I want. So I'm going to go into gen entity, entity gen. And right here we've got the gen create entity thing that wraps these calls, and I'm going to say that that's not a thing anymore. So, okay, I don't even have to do that. I can just say that there's a gen create entity, like pattern, something like that, right? Or gen create pattern, and it probably should be entity pattern. And we say the name, and in here, what happens is we call this function, which is like, you know, whatever it is, and it gets passed basically just the region and then the thing, so the spec, I guess, whatever you want to call it, and it will get all of the data that this thing needed. So when it was coming through here, all of the stuff that this was using, it will receive. So, for example, it will take the grid. I don't know what this thing was called. There's like this weird grid thing we made to help with construction. Edit grid. So it'll take the edit grid and the sim region. The edit grid probably has the sim region in it. Yeah. So actually, it just needs the edit grid. It needs the spec that it was given. So the thing that the entity, like, pattern, you know, maybe this is called the pattern. So you do gen pattern, you call this thing with the pattern, it creates all of the entities that it needs, and hopefully that's kind of it. So then in here, at the bottom of this, we just have some of these, right? So in here, we would have one for each of the things that we're currently creating. So all of the places that we're doing stuff in like world gen now that created those just become calls to these rather than what they were doing before. So for example, when we go down to where's like this stuff? Yeah. So when we look at this, like from now on, like there wouldn't be like anything happening inside placecat, right? So instead, and this would also, I guess, get us out of this iterate options stuff as well. So the options thing that looks for places to put things, that probably doesn't have to happen anymore because now we can just look at the time. So this might simplify things. I don't really know. So we'll see. But you can see here, we've got 4 of these that we would do, right? So I think what happens is we just say, yeah, okay, there's the cat placement thing, which just literally does this, I think. Okay, so no, I take it back. The option thing is fine, because that's just picking which room it is, right? So that's actually fine. So, this right here is probably all we really need to do. So it's like this, right? So when we do placecat, it just says, you know, I don't know what this is. This is the cat function or whatever. We would just say add pattern. Add cat, right? And then the thing that actually adds the cat, because it would just get welded in, right? So it would just be this, I think. Right? And the nice part about this is a lot of the stuff gets simpler because now it's actually just creating an entity and we don't have to duplicate all of that stuff. So we can just create the entity using the region that comes in on the grid. We can add the flags that we want for the cat. We can use the base asset can just come from that pattern structure. So we can preserve that concept because that still works well. Like this tags thing, I guess, would be it. So I guess in here, I guess in there, I'm not really sure how much. I don't want to change too much at once, but I feel like that stuff can be really simplified now as well because we have sort of those more convenient things for working with the classes and all that. But, you know, oh well. So let me take it one step at a time. But anyway, so we're going to add an entity here. We'll do this work. We'll pretend we have one of these base asset things, which we don't really have. It would come from this. And then we would just create it in here. And that would just be things that you specify on the cat that you actually want. And we know that it has to be a cat, so that tag thing could also be specified there, I suppose. And it's a little annoying that you still have to do this thing. You know what I mean? I don't know. It has to loop over that gen thing, but it seems like it's a little annoying. It seems like we should be able to get rid of this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like this should be able to go away. So we'll see. I'm just going to go slowly for a little while, and we'll see what ends up happening. So, this can just go away now. These are actually now, I think, just straight up calls, right? So we don't really need them to be, we don't really need them to be function pointers anymore, I don't think. We'll leave them that way for now because there's no reason not to, but we don't actually need to do that. So when you create one of these, you just have the entity piece asset base asset thing. Entity piece asset is a tag hash and a variant. So you can see why this doesn't really make much sense to me. An asset tag hash is just one of these things, and you can munge them however you want. So I'm not sure we care about that either. So I kind of feel like this genentity tag builder thing should go away. It doesn't really make any sense anymore, and I don't think we really need it for anything. So I would suspect that we can eliminate that too, just by thinking it through a little bit better. So yeah, let's just go whole hog. Let's just go whole hog. So let's just get rid of all this stuff. So we have asset tag hash here, and the thing with asset tag hash is we want to be able to generate that thing conveniently and modify it, right? And I'm pretty sure that we have hash stuff for that. So like, you can see us doing stuff like getting tag hashes here, and you can extract things from it. It's just it just builds these things up, right? You can see it's like category plus some hash stuff there, right? It's pretty straightforward what's happening. So I feel like, we can just do that. So I think what we'll do is we'll just say, okay, entity tag hash is what we're storing. It's just what's going on, and we'll leave it like that. When we go through here, this is going to be the pattern creator thing now. So this is a type def gen create pattern, and that, oops. So that's the pattern, and all the rest of this stuff can probably stay the same. Facing direction probably shouldn't be there anymore. I mean, I'm going to leave that out because I don't know that we care about that at the moment. So we've got genentity flag with the gen flags, allow directions for next. That's just, not necessary anymore at all, I don't think. So this would go away. That would go away. I think all of this stuff goes away. So I think we're really just looking at this. So there's stuff here where you say like what the tags are coming in as. And we may want to change this a little bit to something that's like, this could even be something more like asset tag ID, ID, or like tags like that, where we just say these are used by the caller however they want, and we don't really know. So the creator just uses these tags for something. You know what I mean? And we'll see. We may not even need that, but I think we might, just in terms of knowing which particular asset's supposed to go where. I don't know. We'll find out. So it'd be more like this, and so the pattern creator thing would just get called here. And these would all just be functions, right? So these just take the region and they add the thing, and that's it. So they're literally they're back to what they used to be, right? They're back to just calls that add entities, which again is just about simplifying life. It's trying to make this less complicated because it was just it was putting too much stuff on top that didn't really need to be there. And so I think it would be fine. So this takes an asset tag hash for base asset. So these all looked like that. And now we can just make these regular function calls so that they can actually take other things as well, depending on what they are. So they're just more flexible as well, if that makes sense. So I think that should be fine. That all looks fine. I think we said we wanted to be able to steal heads from orphans, so this should probably change while we're at it. We said we wanted to be able to steal heads from orphans, or swap heads with orphans. So that should probably change. You know, do you swap heads or do you swap bodies in this game? It would make more sense thematically if you swap bodies. So like you do the swap and you swap your head with their body and then you hop around on their body would probably make more sense. You know? That would probably make more sense, but I don't know. Doesn't matter. Either way, you're going to be swapping something. So yeah, so, you know, in here where we add orphan, it should really probably be two entities, right? And those entities should be just linked together like the hero is. So at some point we should do that. It's just something to remember to do. All right. So back to our story. So yeah, these are just going to be like this now. And now we've got all of our creation code looking a little bit better. This stuff, gen entity at P, is just setting the result P to something, which doesn't seem super useful, but, you know, whatever. So I think that probably doesn't really need to be here. None of this stuff does. These probably would rather just be a call that places something somewhere. So you can say like place and then you do whatever the thing is which you were going to be placing. So, you know, maybe this is just place entity at P. You know what I mean? And it presumably doesn't need anything but that. You know what I'm saying? And we could even do this as an operator if you wanted. I don't think I want to go that far because we don't really do that in Handmade Hero, but we could. Same thing here. So if you do like ND and we say, I guess we don't care about that part, because we would just not call this. So we do something more like place entity at traversable and place entity on traversable. So this would just be a traversal reference standing on. So something like this. And the difference between at and on would just be whether or not they occupy it, right? So you put it there and you either occupy it or you don't, right? So here's that. This would just be exactly what it looks like. Right? That sort of thing. So we've got Monstar and Familiar here, which we're not really using at the moment. So we'll just leave those up at the top because maybe we want to add Monstar and Familiar at some point. That all looks fine. And then we just have the actual pattern generation stuff, right? So now where you do place snake or whatever it is, this stuff, right? This just goes away because the place snake thing is just going to be inside the entity creator part, right? So literally you would just say this whole thing goes in here. Right. And this would create everything. And we would just call stuff like add snakehead directly. So and then we just need to start thinking about how we want to try to create these patterns, but they can be a lot smarter now than they used to be, and we can start hacking them. And it's a lot of code, unfortunately, like that we'll have to write, but I don't know really any way around it because we need something that's pretty flexible, right? That makes sense. So anyway, that all looks fine. That all looks fine. This could probably be simplified to just say use the brain ID of the head. So this would just be add brain here. Undead and bones is just what the tag is, right? And so we can, I think, do this. And skip this whole add tag thing. You can see why I want to do this, because this code is just too much. There's too much code that's not doing anything other than bookkeeping. And so I'm just going to try to keep collapsing this down until it's smoother. That's the real goal here, is to smooth it out. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, in add snakehead, in this case, you can see that it's just going to do all of the basic stuff we needed it to do, and then we're going to set the brain up here. Then we're going to place the entity at a P. Actually, this is going to be an on-traversable kind of a thing, right? And this is the part that's going to be hard. And then we will just try to create these segments, and we will go through and do add snake body for each segment. And I think that gets rid of that code. This stays the same. We don't know what that will do. We don't care about this anymore. That goes away. So I think now we're, yeah. So you can see, like, basically this stuff now is more what we wanted to write. And furthermore, we can probably just collapse these. Since snake heads and bodies are presumably all getting generated by the snake pattern generator anyway, we could even collapse those down, right? So now, basically what we're doing is we're regressing the code now that we've got a new routing in place. We're trying to get the code back to the simplicity that it was at originally, where you just kind of created this stuff, in line, right? And that's the goal. So yeah, you can see here like where we added the head. So here we would just say, okay, the head is there, like so. We made a collision volume for it. For whatever reason, we add this piece to it, which is the body piece. We add the light to it. We connect this to the world, and we give it some hit point. Oops. We will call this headlight. And that lets us just create this thing in line, right? Then for each segment, we would say, take the snake body and put that in here. I don't know why those have lights, so I might suggest that we just don't do that anymore. So then in here we would say, okay, snake segment does what it does. This collision volume and that collision volume are like the same collision volume. So maybe we just use the same one for now. And then when we're actually making the visual piece here, which... Actually, no, that's not true. So it's this visual piece that gets connected to the world here, this part. This is just the head piece. It's not the headlight. This is the headlight. Okay. So this is just the body piece, or the seg piece. It's kind of annoying how you have to make both those calls. I feel like these should be a little bit more condensed. Like, it's just too much work, right? But anyway, there's the segment. This goes away. That stays in. And so there's our snake creator. And we could do better. I think we can collapse some of these down a little bit. They're a little bit too verbose, in my opinion. But now it's nicely condensed. It's not strewn all over the place like it was before. So I think that's better. I guess that's an on. The cat does take up a square. So I think that's better. Happier with that. And so then, yeah, so if we look at the base asset now, then probably what we would do is say tag 0 goes here, and that was undead, and then bones, right? So you can see that would pull the base asset out and then switch it each time, which maybe means, yeah, maybe we do. Maybe we can just make that be locked in there, where this can just be an asset tag hash. And maybe there are multiple of these eventually. I don't know. So maybe we do that, and we just say, okay, you pass in what kind of a snake you wanted, right? And then we pull that out of the pattern. Like so. So then, when you say that you wanted a snake, which somebody does, yeah. So then, when you wanted a snake, we could say something like place pattern or add pattern, and it would be something like this, right? You see what I'm saying? So you'd go like, okay, add this pattern. We want a snake pattern in this room. We want it to have these tags. It goes in this room. Something like that. And if I need my 4-coder indentation to get better. I need, like, somebody needs to remind me off stream to go talk to Ryan and Alan and update to the newest stuff. Because I'm behind, and I think they fixed this stuff. I just am behind, unfortunately. So that is what we're talking about, right? And maybe it's something like this. Actually, you know, maybe that's what we're talking about. And then similarly, like, this would actually be more like that. Seems like a plan. Okay. Wait, so which one is which? The previous room. The snake goes in this room, the previous room, yeah. Okay, so that we don't care about how that, we can deal with that later. Okay. So this is going to be a tile pattern, or a switch pattern. Tile switch pattern? I don't know. So we just do something like this, where we add these things, and then we make them do whatever it is that they do, or something. It's fine. Doesn't matter. Point being, we create those, and then we can set these things which get passed through as parameters, and then they get called later when we actually need to add those things to the room. And, the only thing I would say is that I suspect we're probably going to end up wanting to put this stuff in a more, like... My suspicion is that this is all just a gigantic waste of our time. I'm going to do it in these steps anyway to take it slower. But I'm guessing that what we're actually going to want to do is get rid of this entirely. And this thing will eventually just be a giant flags field or something that just says, here's all the stuff that's supposed to be in this room. Because we're probably going to want to do stuff that goes, oh, if there's snakes and switches, then do this, right? So it's probably going to have to be like you call genroom, and genroom is this giant function that's like does all this crazy stuff, right? But we're going to want to do that checking. So I think this was probably just a bad idea, because although the world can probably get away, maybe can get away with how we did it, I think rooms cannot, because of they're like the central aspect of the gameplay, they have to be sort of knowledgeable about all the things that are going on in them. So I really don't know that this makes sense as a thing, right? But we'll see. So anyway, I think that's all of the things that had that sort of pattern-like thing happening. So in here then, when I make one of those, gen create entity pattern, tile switch pattern, I can now take this out and dump it in. And we've got this place orphan thing, and that's really a gen create entity pattern. This is like a it's not really an orphan pattern per se. It's sort of more like a it's sort of more like a NPC pattern. So like this doesn't probably need to be specific in that way. It can probably be more like, where does orphan name tag go in this, by the way? It's here. Okay. So if we make this pattern, the orphan name tag thing, I guess, goes at the beginning of the orphan. So I guess it's like gen entity pattern, or gen entity orphan, or I don't even know. It's result, I guess. Result equals add pattern. What do we call these? Patterns? So NPC pattern. So we're going to add an NPC pattern here, and then I think we just do result base asset equals get tag hash, and it's going to be orphan name tag. And asset none, probably. I mean, I don't really know. I'm not sure how this thing was supposed to work, and I don't care. So anyway, it's going to be something like this, where you have just that first part of it there. And then that's literally all this thing does. And you can see that this is kind of stupid. Like these don't really make any sense, and they're kind of dumb. So, if we move on from there, and this is extra stupid. Like all this stuff is really stupid, and we should probably change it. Whatever. Point being, if we look at this, these are the same. You know, these are the same code. So it's just this. It's something like that, right? And we'll work on that later. So when we do place cat and place orphan, these are actually just place NPC. You know what I'm saying? Oops. And I don't think we want this stuff, because, you know, this should just be tag Hannah, tag Fred, and tag Molly. You know, this should not be, none of this stuff should be the way it is. So placing NPCs in the world should just be like, you know, I don't know why we did it this way, but, you know, it's not necessarily bad. But there's the you know, the people. And the cats, and so those are all placed around, and we should then say, I don't know, here's the place NPC pattern, and it wouldn't be add orphan, it would just be like add this NPC, and I don't know, we're just gonna dump this crap directly in here, is what we're actually gonna do, like that. So here we create the actual orphan. Tag orphan should really be in there on the NPC pattern. So this like NPC should be like tag orphan probably, although is orphan even in there? I don't know. Let's look at what the tags are, because we probably want to update those as well. Like, where is tag orphan? Is that even in here? Yeah. So it's orphan and then the thing, and then what are the cats? Yeah, so like this stuff, I don't know, that doesn't really make any sense. So I think this should be more like, that's Fred, you know, that's Hannah, and that's Molly. And when you look at these, I don't know if they really need, like, cat put in front of them. You know, it doesn't really make much sense because it's just that's just the character. Same with these. Like, I don't know that you actually need these to say orphan because it's just whoever the person is, you know? And I don't know what putting orphan in front of it does for you other than just make matters more complicated for no reason. So I do wonder if we want to just do something more like this. Right? Because I'm not sure what the point is of overcomplicating the tags. Because I think the tags were just kind of dumb. And we only really need them... we only really need them to do stuff for us that we actually care about. So if we want to say, like, here is the body of the thing and the head of the thing, then it makes sense to have a separate tag that's like, what part is it? So it's Dylan head, Dylan body, or whatever, right? That stuff makes a lot of sense. The other stuff doesn't. And furthermore, the fact that there's asset type with base, like, that stuff is dumb. We should get rid of that as well. It should just be the tags here are like layered body or body layered. Those are the two tags we needed. The rest of this stuff was just a waste of time, right? So yeah, we have a tremendous amount of work to do to clean all this stuff up. That's just the nature of the beast. Like, it's fine. You know, I don't mind. But when you actually can start to see how things should be working, you want to do it, right? You don't want to just go, oh, we didn't do it that way before, so we're not going to do it that way now. You know what I mean? That's just a bad excuse. So we have Molly, Fred, and Hannah now, and they're going to be in there, and I don't remember, where do we have our, there it is. I'm like, we know we've got a, so let's do Molly, Fred, Hannah, and there we go. Now, these are all capitalized, but in the game HTTP, they're lowercase, so I guess these tags are case insensitive. I guess. Not sure why, but that's what we did. So it is. Okay. So getting rid of, like, orphan in here, because it's not useful. Oops. I'm just going to remove it. I'm just going to remove it manually because I don't really want to remove it automatically right now because I want to see where this is actually being done. Why would that ever be the default? I'm so confused about why the default is to delete up to the thing, and then if you hit it again, it deletes the rest of it. Like, that makes it impossible to ever delete one thing using that hotkey. It kind of makes the hotkey worthless. But somehow that's the default. It's really weird. At least it seems like it is. I don't know. Maybe it's not. So I think that's fine. For now, we don't have to look at the rest of this stuff. That's all is what it is. Yeah. Okay. So let's keep going here. So let's do a struct like so. And the recursive open tile search thing, like I said, I don't really know that we want to keep doing this. So I'm just going to say that that goes away. Like, that's going away. As is this. Well, so I guess I don't know. No, because I don't even want to go in that order anyway. So those are all going away. Goodbye. I don't care about any of this, I don't think. Let me look at where that's used. Yeah, so all of that stuff I think I can just do directly now. So I probably will do all that stuff directly now. Yeah. What's this stuff? Yeah. So all of this stuff is pointless and we can get rid of it. So lots of code can go away, which is great. So get piece asset can get removed. Goodbye. And goodbye. Alrighty. So in here, where we're doing entity visible piece, and we do the change hash thing, all we have to do here is just say, oh, well, just call get tag hash. Because now you can build the tags directly, right? And we should be able to make that work, right? And I thought we had one of these that specifically works. Nope. Yeah. I thought we had one of these that specifically did the changing of the hash from the actual hash. Did we not? Oh, weird. So it's just called get tag hash. There you go. What does add piece take? Oh, weird. And entity visible pieces take those? This is so crazy what we're looking at here. So this is all, and that's just an asset tag hash plus a variant. Okay. This is crazy. This is so crazy. Because you look and it's like the entity visible piece already has a variant in it. Right here. Right? So that's all really kind of nuts. Yeah, we need to simplify this stuff. This is just too nuts. All right, so we're gonna have to take this slow because there's way too much crap in here, right? So when we add these don't have any variants anyway, right? So anytime you do an add piece call, you should be fine to just not pass that, right? And I have no idea what's going on with the variant stuff because why would you need an additional variant, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So we must have done that and kind of only half finished it because there's a variant value right here and then there's one right here as well. You know what I mean? And so maybe that was meant to be welded in or maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But it doesn't really make a lot of sense why you would need to do that. I think it was probably just because we had such a long conduit, we thought we would save ourselves time by doing that. Right? But forget that. Because now that we're actually creating these things directly where they're actually spec'd, we shouldn't need to do that anymore, right? So we can grab the variant here, and we can get the bitmap match there and be done. Okay, so get tag hash, add piece, blah, 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 blah. Here's a bunch of add piece nonsense with assets. I don't know what these other add piece calls are. Okay, so they're these. So it's just that, and I think we're probably good now. So kind of just a pain in the butt, but, you know, it always seems obvious once you do stuff. This goes away. Gen create entity pattern. Got to get rid of the semicolon. And we're back. So change hash just isn't a thing anymore. It's just get hash. I don't know what that is complaining about. Oh, it doesn't know what the base asset is. So that's actually in the gen, in the pattern. So it's just the pattern, right, is where that is. So that's pretty easy. So here's the thing we don't know. When we add the cat, we're not really sure where it's going to go. Here's the snake pattern. And I guess this is technically like the cat pattern, right? And really, I guess it's NPC pattern now, so I guess we don't even need cat pattern, maybe. I mean, maybe we do, maybe we don't. We'll look at that, I guess, later, but I'm going to remove that for now. So, okay. Should be kind of okay here, except for the placement part. I would think that would be the only real thing that's broken, because everything else should be okay. And so really we should just be left with the placement calls in red, which is exactly what we have. These don't return anything, so that doesn't need to happen. Same here. So the tile switch pattern now, we can just do exactly what this is doing. None of this has to happen. So now all we're really going to be doing is looking at that particular element of the grid. So the code that used to have to happen in here happens outside of here now, right? So basically this code is now what's happening. It's what's happening. None of that happens anymore. In fact, this code will be going away, right? So this is the actual code that we need to now call. In here, we get the content structural thing. So this part, it's this, right? We are going to look through the area that we're at, which is like the part we don't know is where it is, but we're going to get it. We don't need that. We're going to take the brain slot of that thing. So, you know, this part will be coming from the pattern, whatever it told us the brain was. And then the slot keeps going. I suspect, I'm just going to say that this is probably not in there. It's probably just that now. We don't care about that. We don't care about this or that, because that's all fixed now. This is the part we need to set for this thing. We don't need any of this. We do need any of this. No, no. Right? So all of that is fine, and this is just the entity that we're going to edit. So this is, I think, all we need. And that just works, right? That seems good. Then we get down to here. So now we're into placing, we got to do the stuff for placing the NPCs. We're almost done with these, so that's good. So again, not too bad. A pretty major code reorganization, but really not too bad, you know? Not super horrible. Probably finish it next weekend, right? Not too long of a thing. It's probably like a 3-hour reorg, roughly. Something like that. All right. So then we get into here, and yeah, later this will become fancier because we'll probably have like actual tags stuff we'll set, but for now, again, we just modify the places. And so in here we say NPC pattern. Okay, we've got the orphan. We don't really need that. We don't really need any of this. So now we have like, what's our facing direction going to be? Well, we'll just store that in a variable, and then we'll try to put this entity in places. So there's one entity with a body and a head. Looks like how that works. The pieces for their facing direction need to have that set. So I assume that the entity just sets its facing direction. I think that we don't need to set it on individual pieces. They all inherit it, right? It's just like a transform hierarchy, so they get it from their parent. So that's all fine. This should just work, I think. Right? All of that's fine. Yeah. Actually, I think all that just works, right? The base asset comes from the pattern. So that's done. And then, yeah, we're where we are. And inside this append entity thing, like this, none of this has to happen. So we just need the part where we actually place this stuff in the world. So like this stuff here is what we would be talking about, and it's like this kind of a thing. So we would place the entity on a traversable, and we don't know how to do that yet. And we would place this one at a traversable, and we don't know how to do that yet. So those are the two parts we don't know. As far as add conversation is concerned, I don't know that we need that to really be a callable thing, but we might. So I'm going to leave it that way. I don't think there's a base asset for that. In fact, it doesn't use it, right? So it's just that. Oops. And obviously we don't need any of this. So it's literally just placing that thing somewhere, and we just don't know where. So the dialogue gets placed there, and so yeah, I mean, I think we've pretty much ported all of that code now. And the main thing we need to do now is start thinking about how those patterns will actually work. So let's go ahead and clean up some of this stuff before we do that. And then, you know, then at that point, I think we'll probably call it a day. So this add entity call is really now an add pattern call, and it takes the gen entity pattern thing, or whatever it is. I don't remember what it's called. Gen create pattern. So it's like that. And add tag is not a thing. And append entity is also not a thing. Place entity is also not a thing. Right? So hold on. Yeah. So it's really that. Yeah, and so really this thing doesn't need to look like this either. So why are there even two of these? What even is the point of that? Anyone want to tell me? Because I don't really see it. So, like, when we place one of these things, why are we not just saying, look, add the pattern to this room? Like, that's what we're doing, right? So when we say add pattern, it should just be, like, you add it to the room, because where else are you going to put it? Right? And you always know which one you're doing, really. I mean, I guess we could stratify it out, but like... So I don't know, like this doesn't, like I think, I could be really wrong about this, but I feel like you're adding these groups, and the groups are now all you need. You don't need another level down. Right? Because a room has a set of these, and there aren't multiple of these. So I'm pretty sure really what we're looking at is this. Right? So let's just do it. Let's just finish it off. Damn. I gotta fix this thing. It's the weirdest thing. Like, I wish I knew what the logic was for that. It makes no sense to me. You go back one token. It thinks that was a token. But in no universe could that possibly be a token. But then, if you have, like, this, and you delete, it deletes the comma and the token. It's so weird. It's like it's on underscores it's super conservative, and on commas it's super aggressive, and I have no idea why that's happening, or why you would ever want that, more importantly. Like, I mean, I guess there must be some reason, but I'm not sure why that would be a thing you would ever do. Okay, so we've got our little patterns here, and I'm just going to say that that's what happens. So you do add pattern, and you give it the room that you're adding the pattern on, like so. It does this garbage here, like so, and it just says, okay, like, here's the pattern that you asked for. That's really annoying. And then you just go like, okay, result, result, result. This goes away. And we do first pattern, and that. Okay. So we create one of these. We set the next. We make the room. Oops. We make the room by Tommy Wiseau. Add that on, and now I think we are good to go. Okay. Okay. So what else we got? Okay. That all looks fine. Place NPC looks like the only thing that's actually doing the search that way, so that's probably fine. That all looks fine. Here's the add pattern. This is the room, so we need to pass the room with Tommy Wiseau. And then I think those are the placement things, which we know we need to fix anyway. This is just an identity pattern. Otherwise, I think it's what it should be. That all looks right. That's just a spelling error. So, looks good. And looks like we added like a chair at some point. Who cares about that at all? All right. So here's the part that we actually were, this is where we actually had the variant stuff. So let's try and clean this up now so we can figure out what the heck we want to do. Because it's all going to be inside generate room. Like that's where all of the garbage is going to be. So for get tree tags, you can see already we've got the piece here. We're creating, I don't even really know, like that's adding the cube. This is adding the tree entity. So I'm pretty sure we just change all this and just say, we just call add tree, right? Is what actually happens here. So I think this should all be simplified quite a bit, right? It's just because this code, like, you know, we've never really spent any time. We just dump stuff into it. And we never spend any time looking at it going like, how should this actually work? So get tree tags is fine, but I don't know that we really need it. I think what we can do instead is just have a thing that's like add tree or whatever it needs to be. Yeah. So let's try that. I'm going to go over into energy gen here, and I'm just going to have up here like an add tree call for now, where we do an internal thing where we're just like, okay, add the tree. Here's the thing that, you know, does whatever randomization we were doing before. So I don't have to think about it. And this is just like add tree. And, you know, it adds the tree. For right now, we're not even gonna pass anything in because we don't even pass in data about what kind of tree it should be, I guess. Although, you know, we'll see. If we actually did have some of that in here, we can pass it through. But for now, we're gonna assume we don't because I don't know that we did. And then we're just gonna say like, okay, you can see here like the way that we're adding this stuff on here. We just need to change the way that we're looking at this because we don't just stack up tags randomly and throw it into a tag matcher anymore. There's like specific tags that go with specific things. So we're going to want to fix the way this thing is doing what it's doing, and that's fine. But first things first, let's deal with the tree part. So you can see here, this is the tree thing. So what we would do here is just do add tree, right? So we would do add tree, and we would place the tree. So we do that, and then like place tree on traversable, or sorry, place entity on traversable, and that's the traversable. I don't really know what that is about or why we care, but it'd be something like this. And when we add the tree, it would, I mean, that would be it, right? It just adds the tree, and there's the tree. So I think it's something like this. Where this, where we do add inanimate, that creates one of these things. So the first piece wants to have a variant set for it. And so we could even just have it so that if this is just, you know, this is just a variant that comes in here and it's normally set to 0, we can even just do that if we want to. So like body variant equals variance, something like that. So that in here where we do add tree, we can say add obstacle. The variant is some random number, whatever it is. And then the asset tag hash is just, you know, this thing. And that's it. So, I mean, man, like, so much sort of crazy bookkeeping gets eliminated, which I think is just a good sign. We don't know what we're doing with this stuff yet, I mean, to be sure. So we're pretty far from out of the woods on the placement side of things, but that's the part that we know is going to be hard anyway, because we just have to write code that does intelligent stuff for that, which is going to be tough. But anyway, so if we go ahead and do add obstacle here, again, rather than having to make these calls, we just do the actual thing in place, which I think is way better. So we do it, the tag hash here. The ref part of this is the placement call, right? So this would just be place entity on traversable. I mean, I'm just going to call it lamp. And, you know, that's it. That's all we're doing. So yeah, let's fix this up. Asset hash, random choice, tag winter, tag none. What's the complaint? Is you don't know who Jen is. So it needs the entropy. So this needs a way to get entropy for the randomization. So I'm going to have it pass the, like, gen, whatever those, roll gen. I don't even know, what's that thing called? World generator. So I'm going to have the thing take the world generator because it needs entropy, and we're just going to say that that's fine, that it needs that. For add obstacle, asset hash, unilateral, gen entropy, that seems okay, though. Oh, whoops. There we go. And we don't really need to do that. Like, we could just go in and set the variance ourselves, but I felt like, yeah, just pass it through. I mean, who cares? I don't know. That may be a mistake. We may just want to set it after the fact, but anyway. Okay, so now we've got tags where we're doing, like, wall or floor, which one we're doing, right? So what I'd rather do here is just say, like, okay, there's an asset tag for the type, like what the actual, like, tile is, like tile type or something, right? And we're gonna assume, I suppose, that it's a floor, but we'll set it in both cases. So tile type equals wall here, and tile material equals wood or whatever, right? because these have to go in order, or they or at least have to be like sane now. They're not as just random as they used to be, so you kind of have to actually specify them in a particular way. So that seems fine. And then, and these could actually be things that are specified a little bit, in a little bit more interesting way as well, but it doesn't matter. Point being, we go through here, and then when we actually create the thing, which would happen here, right? Piece variant is going to be the unilateral there, and when we do this add piece, this would just be like get tag hash from our tile type and tile material, right? So it actually reads better too. Like you can even just with that, you can now see what's going on. There's like 2 tags that you're setting, and you're setting them based on some parameters you had. And now you could pass one in as well. So like, we had this thing in here where we were like gen room, and it was like what was the type of the room or something like that. Right, it was like stone floor. That could now actually just be like what's the type of tile you want on the floor, right, or something. So you could see how you could like it makes things better too in a way. But anyway, it actually makes it more flexible, I should say, easier to make like parameterized. So when we do add tree, we need to send down the generator thing there, because if we don't, it can't get the entropy that it needs. I don't know what this is complaining about, this add obstacle call. Looks like it doesn't like the, oh, that's why. There you go. So other than the placement stuff, what else we got? So generated first. So this, when you're creating the door now, we can literally just do this directly, where we do an add obstacle. I don't know why we're adding a tree for doors, but we are. Maybe that can change now, like since we can add an obstacle much more easily. Maybe we do a get tag hash here. And where we were doing the asset block thing with the materials, like maybe in here we say like, okay, it's a wall made of stone. I don't know. Don't look at me, dude. Do I look like I program games to you? No. So anyway, when we do add obstacle, we would just pass the region that we're using, and then we just need to place it on this location. So we just need to do a place entity on traversable, and it goes like on top of the thing. I think that's how we decided to do it. So we would just say place the door on that traversable, and that's it. Yep. So then we just loop through the patterns now, and we let each pattern generator there we go. We let each pattern do its thing. And this is the part that we need to still do, but this gets a lot simpler as well. So this stuff here, we probably want to keep a little bit of it just so we can see like what we were doing when we go to like implement the search code. But basically what we're really going to do now is just call it. It's just a dispatch list. We're just saying, look, everyone in this list gets a chance to do something to the room. But that's all, right? So it's literally just that. And you pass like the construction grid and the pattern you were trying to make. And off it goes, right? So yeah, like I think we're basically done. with all of the porting at that point. And we now just need a way of actually placing these things, which is, like I said, the hard part. But we've organized it so now that's like in more control, a more controlled thing that's happening. When we're placing the apron here, you can see that we want to place tiles. That's really easy for us to do. When we do this add piece, this is just a get tag hash, right? And I think that's literally all we need to do to that code. And then that last bit there where we're adding a tree would again just create the tree by calling it add tree call, and then a like place entity on traversable where it's and it's actually not. It's just a place entity at P, because that is actually not a traversable. So again, pretty simple. Much simpler than it was before. And so that all seems good. So now we are just left with the problem. Did I do something wrong here? Oh, so it doesn't even need the region. Right. So I think that's it. Pretty much everything else is now just the fact that we don't know where the things are in the room, because we've gutted that piece of the code, which was the entire point of that whole epic adventure. And what we'd like to do here is find a way to, we'd like to find a way to sort of have some utility code that substantially does the same stuff, like the greedy search stuff, for example, was a crappy version of it. We'd like to find some stuff that we can use to quickly build pattern finding like that. And that's going to be a topic for a different day, because we don't have time for that, obviously. But what we can do here is we could just make a thing that like searches, like spirals outward or something from where we are. Try some things. And, we just, if we can't find a place to put something, we fail, So you could imagine something that was like, okay, we want to place entities on traversables here. And, like, you can imagine the crappy stuff that just kind of does the same thing it used to do, but now maybe it places them more towards the center of the room or whatever. So we can even make it a little bit better already. But in general, we would just say, like, find random open tile or something like that. And we would just say, here's the construction grid. And that would give us back, one of those edit tile placement things. Or I don't quite remember exactly, but it's like, there's like a relative this thing, So this is like what we would do, I guess. And we would just say, can you please place that, place the thing on there, And I'm pretty sure we have an is valid on those. So we can just do, like, this kind of thing. So I think that's fine. I mean, it's not the best thing, but at the moment we'll just try it like this, and then we'll try to just expand this code and see what we can do, because I don't know, I don't have a strong opinion, I don't have an idea right now about how we will go about doing this, but so we'll do something like this. Yeah. Maybe like that. And we'll just do the head tile where we start is where we look from, you know, something like that. And we then just do this each time. And so that is like the super duper crappy version. And this maybe takes one of those like box mass planar things. And this maybe takes a like where did you want to start from kind of thing. Something like that. Oop, no. I meant there. And like that's just what happens. You know what I'm saying? And then we'll just go from there. And we'll see if we can make things that allow you to look for little patterns and you can test like some locations or something. But we, like I said, we may even have to move it out one more level above that into the room stuff that will like actually carve up the space in an intelligent way. So this is just step 1, and step 2 will probably be like creating more of a unified thing. Just because I think it's going to have to be that way. And I don't know why I didn't think of that originally when I started breaking it up like this. It was probably just dumb. But, you know, you program on a project only once a week or twice a week or something. Your brain is not like super with it. You know, it doesn't think of all the pieces as well as you would like. You know what I mean? So, you know, we just go, all right, this thing needs to create a, a place for the NPC to live, and, you know, maybe NPCs are kind of supposed to be up more towards the top. It felt like it feels like our grid is, like, backwards or something, because I'm not sure why it was going the other way. Oh, maybe it goes the... You know, normally I would say that is higher, like Y goes into the screen. So I don't know. I'm gonna leave it like that. We'll deal with it. Let's go make sure we know what the coordinate system is first, but that'll be a different thing. Anyway, I would then say, okay, let's do. Oh, you know, yeah, I could see this getting cool. Yeah, so I think we're okay shape. Don't worry, everything's fine. So we'll have the care tile, and we'll have the talk tile, and this is like south, I guess. Right, and assuming they're both valid, we place the thing down. Oops. And then we just say, yeah, man. And stuff, bro. And we say care tile and talk tile like that. And those both come through here, and everyone loves it. It's freaking great. And off you go. And I think that's everything that we need there. This one is the same as this, so that's just going to go like that, and it will do like, well, actually, no, I don't know what this is going to do yet, because we haven't thought about that. So actually, this is just going to do that. You know, like, find me a random open tile, just do it, please. And then I don't actually know... and then I can just do this. I don't know. that. How is this supposed to work? Like, if you can't get the tile from the tile, what kind of tile are we even talking about? Like, if you have the concept of an edit tile, aren't you supposed to be able to use that somehow? Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense, does it, folks? Like, you can see this was being used as a loop, but how do you actually get the tile out of it? It's just kind of dumb, right? Because you're supposed to be able to get the tile contents. You would think this is... Oh, wait, no, you can. Oh, okay, it's just it takes a pointer. Well, that's fine. I'm not going to complain about that. That's fine. So at that point, I don't know what we want to do, but I'm just going to throw these in there for now, because why not? So if we have both of these, and then we go take the place entity at traversable and on traversable and that kind of stuff, right? Then what we can do is just create facsimiles of these two things, like so. And... You know, I guess we only need on at the moment, where what we would do is we'd say, okay, you know, this takes the edit grid, the entity you're trying to place, and then it takes the tile, you know. And then what you would do is you would call place entity on traversable, and you would pass the grid region, the entity, and then the traversable reference that actually goes there, right? And that is the code that we had in RoomGen, right? That is just this code. And so I think we just do this for now. Right. So we say, okay, you know, we get the tile contents, which we get directly from this instead, you know. We get the structural reference garbage out of that, and then we place it using the information we extract. I think that's it. Then these are just functions that try to pick tiles and, you know, I mean, maybe this is even just like, hey, it starts from the center by default. And we're going to do this in like the dumbest possible, crappiest, most worthless way. And I probably shouldn't have deleted that code because we probably actually could have just cut and pasted it. So that was dumb, and I admit that. That was really stupid. Because we actually already had the code for this. It was just the interior of those recursive loops that we were doing. So that's pretty stupid. But, you know, what are you going to do? We could go back to source code. We could go back to source code control and grab it, but I'm not sure that it's worth it, especially because we're not logged in. I don't think. Although, actually, I guess we are. I mean, we're not. You know what I mean. So, actually, we do have it here, don't we? Because if we look at... I don't even know where that code was, but if we look at the git version, since I haven't pushed anything to it, it still has it there. Now, I don't know where the heck that code was, so I don't actually know where we're even looking. But if we look for, what was it, like, it was like find place to put entity or whatever. Well, it's not going to find it in there, obviously. Yeah, so I don't know where that code even was, but if we look in there, we can pull it back out, so maybe we do that. I'll look for a second, and then if it takes me too long to find it, I'll just write it again. So yeah, it was like find place to put entity or something like that. I don't even know. So this is all for room placement. And it doesn't look like it's in there, right? So it's not in there. It's presumably, it could be in the edit grid, I guess, or it could be in the room. No. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, please stop. No, 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 don't do that. The worst thing in the world is if Visual Studio opens. That's like when you know you're having a really bad day when Visual Studio... It's like when an artist accidentally hits the thing that says open in bridge and they just scream. You can hear them. It's like Adobe Bridge opens up and it's like the worst thing that happens in their day. That's like when Visual Studio opens, right? When Visual Studio opens, it's just the worst, and it's like the same is true of you know, of Adobe Bridge. They're like these products that, you know, if you accidentally click the thing that opens them, you're just really unhappy, right? Because it's going to take forever to load, and then you're not going to actually want it to be there. Okay, so it's this thing. So we can just copy and paste this code out, because this is actually all we need. And we can just use a very simplified version of it, right? So in here, all we're doing is... No. Copy. Okay. So in this, where we have, you know, find place to put blah, 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 or whatever it is, find random open tile, you know? What we can do here is just say, all right, do exactly what you were doing before, but, you know, take a distance metric, and figure out whether or not the thing that you're looking at is it is closer to the starting area you were asked to produce. You know what I'm saying? Just take the distance. And that's all we really need to do, I think. So that's fine. So we'll do that. And then for find adjacent tile, oops. We want this code here where we're doing like, where really it's just this. Right? So we're still using more or less the same code to a certain extent, you know, but we're just not calling it in the same way. So we loop over all of the tiles in the region that we're asked to. We would get the tile here and we would see if it's open. So what we really need is, like, we need the thing that says whether this thing is open or not is the problem. And I guess the way we were doing that is by setting it? Is that what we were doing? Yeah, so in the edit tile contents thing, we have like a B32 open. And that probably we just don't want anymore. So probably what we want to do here is something more like put the traversable reference directly into the edit tile. You know what I mean? Because we're just going to place these things in waves. We're not going to try to do rip up and replace because I just don't think it's plausible, right? So for edit tile contents, yeah, this B32 open thing, I think we just want to do a like is open. So for each one of these, we would do something like if, is open or traversable is open or whatever. And this tile P thing here, where we do the gen v3, I think what we actually want to do is just be able to pass an edit tile for that. So there'd just be a thing that's like, B32 is open, and that would take the edit tile. So assuming that we have that, this really just wants to be a thing that creates the edit tile from that, and this is a relative. It's a relative one, right? So you can see it here. I think is how it would work, and the only thing I'm not certain about, it's always relative, right? It looks like it's always relative. So I'm pretty sure all we have to do is loop over all of the tiles precisely that way. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure this is... Where's the thing that bundles this up? I guess it's here. And I guess this is, why did I even bother with this? That's kind of dumb. So I didn't even need to cut and paste that out. This is just iterate as planar tiles, right? So actually, this thing here does what we want already. This is what we actually want. So we can just do this, right? And that's actually what we want. And then we just say if it's open, then we do something. If it's not, it's not. And the result here is like nothing. And what we probably want to do is say there's a best distance. Like that. And what we'll do is we'll check the distance here, like how far is this thing from whatever the person gave us as a start, right? And we know, because we have this tile count stuff, what we can do is we can say, we don't care about z distance at the moment, so we just have grid tile count y and grid tile count x. Yeah, which I think is just that. Oops. And what we should be able to do is if we take that tile count, we should be able to produce like a center point or an inverse, like a scaling factor that can produce things in the same space as the start from thing, right? Barycentric coordinates for the room, if you will. The room being the room by Tame Wiseau. So if we just say, what's the inverse of this thing, right? Like that. That's the room scale. And so from there, I should just be able to say, whatever the tile's relative index is, that xy times the inverse room scale is the UV. And then I can just do a distance. So the vector from the place that it told me to start to where this particular tile is in barycentric coordinates, I can then just take that and, you know, it's hard to say whether you want, what distance metric you want. Do you want a barycentric distance, which is what this is, or do you want a distance that's in the room, in real world distance? And I just don't know which one you would want, so I'm just going to use this. I'll put a to-do. But we could do it the other way around if we wanted to, you know? In fact, you know what? Let's... Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm vacillating a little bit. We could just do it the other way around. There. So the start P is just the Hadamard product of the, you know, start UV. Yeah. And the tile count, right? So that now we've got a physical placement. That just felt a little bit better. I don't know. I don't have any reason why I'm picking this. I'm literally just going like, hey, yeah, that seems okay, right? Because I don't have an idea for why. I don't have an idea for why I would want that or not. So you know, it is what it is. So I think that gives us a distance, and then we would just do oops. And then we would... Oh, do we not have a XY pick out of these things? What's up with that? Somebody tell me why we don't have that. Gen V3. Where is that? Oh, it's just a V3S. Oh, my. Really? I see. Anyway. So yeah, there's a V2S. Oh, well, that's why. Never mind. Because we don't have V2S's, so we wouldn't be able to slice them out that way. Okay, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. So here we can just do this then. Right, convert it to a V3 and then take the XY out of it. That's fine. Same thing here. Right? And that should be fine. So let's see. Traversable is open. We don't have yet. No overload operator tile. I agree wholeheartedly. And then we just need to do like, look, if the best distance squared is greater than this distance squared, then this is the tile for us, sir. And we should capture the particular tile in question as the result, right? So I think that's all we need. And then the find adjacent part of things just needs to be modified a little bit. I don't know why this is taking an edit grid, because it wouldn't do that. It would take the base tile, right? And then it would say, all right, the dir mask comes in here. We would do get direction from that. We would then say we want to step that in like one tile in that direction. So this is the tile to look for, or to look at, rather. And we would see whether we got it or not. So we would say, okay, there's no tile that starts. We would say that we would look to see if it's open. If it's open, then we use it, right? And this is probably wants to be biased, so we probably want to change that dir mask at some point to say, like, look, you know, either we do these in a random order, or we pass in an array so that, you know, it's not always picking one preferably. So that's just a separate thing. But that's neither here nor there. So then what we would do is say, all right, we're going to go ahead and get this tile out. So that would literally just be the base tile. So edit tile, check tile equals base tile. Check tile rel index is just going to change like that. And then it's going to be like traversable is open, this check tile, or something. And then if that's true, the result is the check tile and you're done. Yep. This doesn't have a plus equals operator, it looks like, so maybe we'll just do this. The grid is not something we got passed in, but it is like... Oh, and that has the grid in it, so we wouldn't need that. We would just say that. So then, the only thing we're missing is this call. Is that true? Not quite. I don't really like the fact that this takes a pointer. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Furthermore, why does it even have to do that? Like, this is dumb because what you would actually do is in here where you do advance, you just null the thing, probably. So that doesn't feel super good. Like, I don't like anything about this at all. That just seems bad. Yeah, so I don't know how I feel about that, but probably not great, if we're honest about it. Probably what I would want this to do is say if tile rel index z is greater than or equal to grid tile count z, then tile, you know, grid equals 0. Right? Like, it's just null at that point. And so that way, when you say is valid, you would just say that if it has a grid, it's valid. Right? Oops. So I would like that to be, you know, zeroable, basically. And so I just want to say, like, if the tile that you pass in has a grid, you know, then it's valid. In fact, it's just this. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that's... like that's what I actually wanted. And then these things here that iterate over the tiles, those are all fine. What is this complaining about? Does not take, find adjacent open tile. That doesn't need the grid is the difference there. Place entity on traversable. What's wrong with that? Oh, it takes a grid. Not that. Find adjacent tile. That's from the care tile. So that actually has to happen here as well. So this place entity at traversable is just a shim, right? So it takes the grid and the tile. This part here, it just calls a different thing, right? We really shouldn't have done it this way. This was dumb. So we should fix this, because the better way to do it is to just say whether it occupies the thing or not. So like, you know, that way you don't have two of these. It's like the inverse Bob Martin. You know, like if you heard advice in a talk by Bob Martin, just think what is the opposite of that advice and do that. You know, he says make a separate function for everything, don't pass flags. The opposite's the true thing. You pass flags because that's what collapses the code down and makes it the most flexible, so you can pass information through streams without having the intermediaries be aware of it, right? Which is what you want. So we kind of Bob Martined that, but oh well. Let's go ahead and finish it this way, and we should probably just go clean that code up so it's not garbage. If we look at is valid here, I just want to take a look and see how this is working and clean it up a little bit, but I think it's mostly just handles itself, right? And yeah, so I think we're good. I think all that's fine. And now I think we're just down to debugging, which I probably don't want to do today because we've already gone over time. So, you know, maybe I'll just step through it and clean up any immediate crashes and things, like clean up any like kind of garbage that I just forgot to wire up or whatever. Let's also close this notepad thing out. So what we want to do is run this and like see where we stop. So this is trying to get, okay, so that looks like I just messed up that tile thing there. What's the tile count? 17.9Z. And that returns 0. Wait, so, did I mess up the iteration a little bit there? Looks like I did. Somehow. Oh, and also we have to finish this. Sorry, so this does have to... That has to happen. Otherwise, everything's going to fall apart. So yeah, so what was I saying? If the relative z is greater than the tricount z, then the grid is done. We're not going to iterate over it anymore. So... But that seems fine. Like, why would that change? That doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm not sure why that got messed up there. This is actually false. That should be an and. That's a separate issue. Like, it should only be, you should only be able to iterate over things that have some volume, right? Which we might even have a thing for already. I don't know. Yeah, so like this is that exact thing we want, right? So it'd be that. Of course, I guess we don't really pass that, but you could just do get total volume, right? And say, it's got to be bigger. So, we probably should have loaded that in there because that makes some sense. But let's actually go see what's going on here because I'm not sure why we're getting this failure. So if we look at this, we see we're trying to get the tile that we're iterating over, and it's not working for some reason. So if we look at the tile itself, here's the grid and here's the relative index. It's looking for tile 090, which doesn't make any sense because it shouldn't be trying to get that tile. Like, that's not a tile. So something about the advance call didn't work, and I'm not sure why because I don't think I broke it. But I guess I did, I mean, you may not think you broke it, but you broke it. So it looks like these things reset to 0. Oh, this only does planar right now. Okay. That's actually what we needed. Sorry. I was thinking this iterated over all 3 dimensions, but it doesn't. It only does planar at the moment. So that makes more sense. Okay. So let's do our traversable is open call. And so what this has to do is this has to get out that structural piece, right? The thing. So the same code that's at work here. This has to get has to access the traversable. And see whether or not it's open. Wherever that is. So what we really want is the transactional occupy. You know what I mean? We're just calling this thing. So when we have the reference, once we have the reference, I think we're done. You know what I mean? So traversable open is just going to call is occupied on the traversable reference for the thing. And in a sense, it just looks like this. Edit tile contents. When you actually do the get tile on that, right, what it probably should do there is say this. Like so. So we can say get the tile. That will give us back the contents. If there's anything there, we'll just say if it's not occupied, it's good. And I think that's all we need, because we already had the call that asks if the thing is occupied, so I guess that's just it. Okay, so it looks like here we're calling that on an entity that doesn't actually have traversables, which doesn't really make a lot of sense because presumably the structural entity always does. So let's take a look at who's calling that and why. look at the call stack. So on here, I guess we would need to see if it had one, because I guess maybe there are structural things that don't have traversables. So maybe, like, actually we want to say, does it have one at all? So is occupied... I mean... I guess here we would want to do, like, this. This is really pretty clumsy, but, you know. Like we did today, eventually we collapse code down into things that are good, but not before it's time. Unfortunately, oh, well, I don't know why that's happening. That's not a good sign, but it's fine. All right, so surprisingly enough, we still generated, like, a lot of actual stuff, which was... I was expecting it to kind of crash and burn there. But actually, you know, looks like it still generated the world. After all of that. So that looks pretty good. Our only problem is our hero looks like he's got the wrong tags on at the moment. So that we want to fix. And also, it looks like the thing that tries to pick more tiles isn't working. It looks like the find adjacent tile isn't working. So let's try to fix those up real quick, because that's less good. And that shouldn't take very long. I can maybe fix the tags thing too. So it looks like we mostly everything just worked. So that's good. So in here, this is the part that doesn't look like it's working. So find adjacent open tile starts out with an invalid tile. It loops over all of the directions you could go from a base tile that you pass it. It tries to figure out what direction that thing would go in for a mask you pass in. And then it says, all right, I'm going to take wherever I was at, I'm going to move the relative index by whatever the delta is. I'm going to look to see if that place is open, and if it is, I'm going to return the tile, right? It looks like that's never working. I mean, I could be wrong about that, and it was just not working most of the time. But since it looks like it's never working, I'm guessing I should be able to just kind of step in here and watch it not work, rather than have to guess, right? That's my assumption. So let's take a look here. So this is trying to make the snake. If we look at what the directional mask says, it's 15, which probably is all 4 planar directions, right? So here we go. And hey, it looks like we're going to try one. Let's see where it thinks we're going to go. And let's also look at the base tile, so we have some idea of where we're going. So it's 8, 4, 0. We are going -1 in X. So that should produce a check tile that's like 1 off. Yeah, 7, 4, 0, right? And then we say, okay, we've got one. We and then have a valid check tile, so that worked. So this looks like it is actually just placing the thing on it, right? So I guess I don't know why that's failing. It looked like it was failing before. So that's not what I expected to see. I'm not sure what's happening. Because clearly, like, you know, at least for here, there's only one of those things. Only one of those, like, switches. And So at least the switch code is bad. Maybe the switch code is just... Maybe just the switch code is broken. It could be. Maybe we forgot to set the prev tile or something. Oh, that's just constantly asking find random open tile. Oh. Right. That makes sense. It's always going to find that because it's always open. So, yeah. So I guess really what we want there is just find random tile with traversable. And then we just want to put the pattern in. So, okay. So that's fine. That's, yeah, all right. So that code is fine. So it looks like the only actual problem we're having is when we add the player, we aren't properly setting up the tag hashes for the player. And that makes perfect sense because we got rid of this orphan tag, right? So I'm pretty sure it's just tag hero now. So wow, we really didn't screw up very much, did we? That's pretty wild. All right. Well, whatever. Let's go ahead and just check. So our other orphans are all going to be borked, right? It looks like that stone wall we tried to put in place is invisible. Like, I couldn't walk through it, but it wasn't there. So that's a little bit broken as well. And I'd like to figure out why that's the case. Unfortunately, these snakes are so good at... They hop all over the... There's never going to be a switch that isn't pressed because of these stupid snakes. So anyway, that's all good. Let's start at the orphanage real quick and just take a look at the orphans, because they're going to have different tag settings as well. So let's just make sure that we get those right, and so that we're not sitting around going, like, what happened to the thing? This code can just go away. So this is now just a trivial loop, which is great. Room connections, blah, 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 blah. So all of this is good. And this just needs wherever that thing. This just needs to be all right. I don't know why I did that. Why not just use the comment out? I don't know. I just didn't. So there we go. And now we can go see if any of the orphans work or if we have to change their tags, because we might need to. Okay, there they are. And, oh, so it looks like that thing is still blocking. So right. Place entity on traversable. This is supposed to be place entity at traversable, and I think we're good now. It's like Bob Barker. And there we go. That's fine. And the baby is here. Hello, baby. Handmade baby. That doesn't sound good. All right. There's the orphans. There's a puss, even. Oh, dear. The puss doesn't have no head, though. I don't know if we ever set up the puss heads. So, it could be... I don't remember how we did this exactly, but it could actually just be that, like, it could be that we just never set those, right? Yeah, it looks like we just never set those, actually. So, like, I don't know. I guess that goes like something like there. And then the weird head thing, that goes like that, probably. I don't know if these should have scale on them or not. And I don't know which one would have scale on it either. So I don't know. Like, I don't know. There's a cat. It's not my problem. So there's a cat, and everyone loves cats, or they're not allowed on the stream. We have another cat here, so we should probably set it. It is... Oops. It is Fred. And looks like that bitmap is actually out of alignment, to be completely honest. Isn't there... How do you set, like, the default alignment position, or you can't? Yeah, you can. So I think we actually want this one to be set to there, because it was kind of like off-center. So I feel like that bitmap just wanted to be recentered first, and then we can place the head on it, and then we can edit the head and where that goes as a separate situation. And you know, I don't know. Fred's kind of overweight. The cat was. His owner, you know, let him eat a lot more than probably he should have. So he's a bit overweight. He's still alive. That's a real cat, Fred, and he's a little bit heavy. So that's why he looks bigger than the other cat, which was Molly, who you've seen on stream. So yeah, like, everything is looking pretty good. I feel like I don't have a lot of complaints here. Let's take a quick second and fix Molly. I mean, Hannah. Because Hannah looks like she's in the wrong place as well. So let's go ahead and add some some alignment points in here, like so. Hannah was a very small cat. She was really tiny. Never ate much, you know. She was a good puss. She's a ghost now. That's why she looks ghostly, because she died a few years ago. All right. So I think all that's good. And you know, who knows? We can set those differently later, but at least now all of our sprites have some basic settings, and that seems good. So I'm happy with that. And the only thing I might say is, like, the lamp stuff. Just for now, I don't really want to put lamps in there quite so much, potentially. So I was kind of thinking of maybe just changing this a little bit. And going like, all right, like let's add a light that's an inanimate object and has no tags. It's invisible. In fact, I think actually not even that. I think it just add entity, right? We just want an entity. We're gonna place it at a location. And we'll add a light, and the light will be fairly large. I don't know what these parameters are because I haven't called this function in forever. It's radius, so maybe it's like a large radius light that's like kind of floating up above the ground, which it looks like that would be with a lamplight, and it has like some fairly high emission, right? And maybe what we do here is we get rid of this on lamp garbage, and we just have a lighting pattern generator. I'm sorry, like this is going wicked long. I'm not even paying attention to the thing. It's just like this stuff is so easy, like we might as well do it. You know, there's no reason not to. So, and it's kind of fun to place things in the world, right? It's you know, it feels creative, even though it's not. So what we might do is get rid of this stuff, get rid of the on lamp nonsense, and just have like a lighting pattern, right? Or like standard lighting pattern or something. I don't even know. But we'll have like a standard lighting pattern. We'll get rid of this stuff. The on lamp stuff is gone. You know, forget that. You know, that's out of here. And then, you know, when we add rooms, we'll just add lighting or we won't, right? And so when we come through one of these things, we'll just say add find random open tile. And the only thing about this is like, maybe we just want to say like find random tile, right? And not have random open tile because we don't actually care if it's open. But, you know, we'll just have that for now with a to-do for next time. This shouldn't actually look for open tiles. So we'll get one, and if it's valid, we'll place one of those on there. Like I said, I don't care about the lamp at the moment. I don't think I want that, so we're just gonna place a regular old light. And we're gonna place it at wherever the tile is that we got back. And we've have it all. And you know, we get back our lamp, and everyone loves it. And this is just a way of placing lights around for mood, right? It's not let me go ahead and just get the entropy out of this. For coder, why do you hate me? There we go. Okay. Right. And so now if we ran this, like the world would have no lighting in it whatsoever because nobody adds the standard lighting pattern to their rooms, right? So it'd just be the hero walking around with like a little tiny light, you know, like so. And so then if we wanted to, we could then start saying, look, let's add lights to rooms. And to do that, we would just say when we create these rooms, so like create dungeon, and create orphanage or whatever, we would just add lighting to these rooms, right? And So like in here, for example, every time we made a room, we would create the standard lighting for that room. So like here, we would say, you know, add pattern, gen room standard lighting pattern. You know what I mean? And I think that would add like lighting to a bunch of the dungeon rooms using that lighting pattern. And then for the orphanage, we would probably need to like be more specific because we probably want to like talk about the lighting more. And like what kind of lighting should be in each room. I mean, we want to do that with the dungeon too, but like I think that adds lighting to the dungeon, right? So you can kind of see there's light in the room now. Of course, the little hoppy snake person also has lights attached. But I'll be honest, it looks like the light is weirdly skewed towards the top. Like, I wonder if that's because it had to find an open tile, so it had to avoid the snake that might have been there. I think that's probably what happened. So, you know, it needs to not do that, obviously, but... So that's fine. So that's all fine. So I think we're good. And then if I do the orphanage one, you know, I don't really know. I guess we'll just add the standard lighting pattern to all these rooms right now. Although it would be cooler if we actually did something real here and had different rooms have different lightings. So, you know, that's the idea, is that we would not do this, you know, the entire time or whatever. But so for lights, here, you know, I guess what I'm saying is I would like to have a I would like to have a way where we customize the lighting for these rooms or something. And we'll have to look. Maybe it goes in the room spec, and then the room spec, when you gen the room, automatically adds one of these. I don't know. But I feel like that's just something we can deal with later. I don't know. There's a lot of text messages. I normally turn my phone off, and I guess I forgot to turn it off. And I don't normally get a lot of text messages because I don't really use messaging much. But apparently, I'm getting a lot of messages now, and I don't know what those messages say. But they probably say something that doesn't need for me to look at it at this immediate moment, so I'm not going to. And that's all I have to say. So that just adds lights, and in a really uninteresting way, right? It just adds lights to rooms, and so they have lights now, right? And no one cares, but, you know, there you go. And as we make the lighting system better, presumably, presumably it will be better. So I guess the other thing I would point out here is that, you know, so we could, when we talk about the standard lighting pattern thing, we probably want that to be smart. Or so if you think about what's going to happen, you want to place lights, you know, more lights in larger rooms and less lights in smaller rooms and crap like that, you know? So what you're probably going to do is have something that's like a Gen V3, that's like your light spacing, you know? And you're going to say, like, okay, you know, we roughly want to place a light every, you know, 5 steps or something, you know? I don't know. But you're going to have some kind of rule where you're like, you know, this is what the spacing is that we expect for lights in 2D or whatever, you know, who cares? And then you could do a thing where you were like, okay, I want to loop over take the room, figure out how many of these there are going to be, and space them correctly so I can step over them that way, right? So, in other words, you would get a thing where you're like, iterate as planar tiles. You could do like an iterate equally spaced, you know? So you'd be something like this. You know what I'm saying? So if you pass in like a spacing, you get like steppings that are like aligned properly for that thing. And I don't know exactly how I would want to do that per se, but it would really just, it would be more like this. Because we're not trying to look for tiles, we're trying to like place lights in the world, you know? And so, you know, I wouldn't actually want it to look like that. It would be this sort of thing. And the light would be placed on the tiles that we iterate. So if you imagine what the planar tile iterator looks like, it's already set up to do what we want, and we can already do this striation really easily, actually, if we want to, by saying, okay, if we do iterate as planar tiles, there's no reason why the edit tile thing can't have a step associated with it, right? So we could do something like this, you know what I'm saying? Where you know you're going to step by that much. So inside this, where you have the step you're going to take, instead of these like plus equalses all over the place, you would just do this and go by the step amount rather than one. All the rest of the code still works. And you could even, you know, you could do this, right? So you have your step, which defaults to 1, 1, 1, and in this case, the final one isn't used, and your base, which defaults to 0, 0, 0. And then your iterator can actually iterate any kind of grid-like pattern, and you didn't actually have to do any more work. You know what I mean? It's the same code for all intents and purposes, but you can call it in like a bunch of different ways. And you get like more mileage out of that. You know what I'm saying? So this would allow us to do that quite easily. And I guess this is really just iterate as planar tiles. And then we would have the base P here, like that. And all we would need to do is say, calculate, you know, calc spacing offset, right? Or something like this. And this would give us, if we passed it the spacing, calculate, you know, base P for offset, and, you know, you'd give it the grid, or something like this. And then when it looked at the grid, it would just figure out where the first one would be, and then you know that you step by that many each time, and then we pass that spacing in, you know, each time. Yeah. Pretty straightforward. And so I think that would just work. And the only thing that you would need to do is that when you do iterate as planar tiles, that just takes the base P, and so when it initializes the thing, instead of the relative index, you know, it's base rel index, or whatever. And similarly, this is, you know, space rel index. It's just the same thing you passed, you know? Now, we can still make that work for everybody else by just doing 0, 0, 0, because that's what it would have been anyway when they initialize, and they'll just work. And then if we do calc base P for offset, and we just shove that in here, just to make it start working before we look at what that calculation actually is, we can just put dstep in here and the edit grid. You know? Okay. And at that point, I think this would actually work, but it wouldn't be centered. So the pattern would not be centered in the room like we would want it to be. But it will do something like that, I think. Right? Okay. Now, yeah, so one problem we get here is we also, when we're doing place entity at traversable, we don't actually want to place this at traversable. We just want to do at P. Right? And so when we get the tile contents thing here, we really don't care about that. What we care about is where this thing is in the world, you know? So I'm assuming that we just want to use the structural entity so here we probably want to do the same thing we were doing before, where we just have one of these, but it works off of the edit tile. And we just say get the contents of this tile, and then instead of this content structural thing, you know, you would just do that. Something like that. So I think that's what we would do. And I don't really know. But I think that's what we would do. And then in theory, you know, that places lights regularly spaced throughout the room. And you can kind of see that that's happening now, right? You know what I mean? We've got too much light in the world now. The intensity of these lights should probably be less because there's so much light. But, you know, that's easy. Just take the light level down a little bit. And so then all we need to do is center them, and that's pretty easy. But you can see now we sort of have better light distribution in the world. And seems okay. I don't really know how high up these lights are. That's a little confusing. So the fact that we don't draw lights is a little not good. You could imagine wanting to draw the lights, and we probably have done this. So, in here where we draw the light, you could just also push a volume outline, right? So if you did push light, you could just do push volume outline and say, okay, if this is where that thing is, it's going to be a rectangle with that shape, I guess. Yeah. So we're going to do, so this would be a rectangle 3. Oops. Center dim, I guess, is how this works. So it would look like that. Oops. And I think that would draw where the lights are, just so we can see them. And so you can see how they're hovering around, and, you know. And that seems is maybe sort of sensible. It does seem with that many lights we get a little bit of feedback, which maybe means we've got a bug somewhere in our lighting. Well, you know, we've probably got a lot of bugs in our lighting. But I don't know why this room seems to not have any light except for what's coming from the ceiling. But I don't see any lights in there. I guess the entry room didn't get any lights. Don't know why. So yeah, but these rooms all did. So I'm not sure why that is, but I guess that room, the entrance room at the end of the forest there, didn't get a light. These rooms all have them, and they look fine. And maybe, so I can take the snake, is not really supposed to have a light on it, so maybe I'll take the snake and remove the light from the snake, because I don't really want the snake to have a light. So add piece light. There's like way too many of these. Maybe the head could still have one, but just, you know, not the body segments. That's just too much. Okay. So there we go. Those are being drawn now. I think those are roughly as high as they should be. I don't know, maybe they should be slightly higher up. It's hard to say. I'll leave that in there so that we can turn it on anytime we want to draw the lights. And I guess that's it. I don't know. Is there anything else? Centering these, so when we do this, you know, we're gonna have the grid tile count. And if you imagine the tile count X and you take the D step X and you say, here's how many there are going to be. So there's like an X count, right? And these are going to be the same thing. We can collapse them. You'll see in a second. But we know how many we're going to have. So like if you say that they need to be spaced 5 apart and the room is like 6 long, then we know we're just going to only be able to put 1, right? So we know how many we would have. And then after we know how many we would have, we just need to figure out like how much extra there would be. So in a sense, we could just say, well, okay, so however much the steps are, we know that there's like an amount. If we take the remainder when we divide this thing, we know there's going to be a remainder to the D step. So if the D step is 3 and the room size is 7, we know we're going to have like, it's probably something better done on the light board or something, but you know, we know we're going to have like 2 spans, like the span that goes from the wall, from the first wall to the light, then from the light to the next wall. There's 2 spans and we want those to be equally spaced. So however many of these there are going to be, we want one more than that, right? Is the size that we're trying to divide up. I don't know if this is making any sense. You know what? We'll do it next weekend, so I can actually draw it out. We're done. We're done now. We finished. There was that one other thing, which was that for some reason we weren't seeing the trees. So when we did the door, like the only other thing I noticed was when we did the door, it wasn't there. We tried to put a door like this, right? So asset block tag wall tag stone or something didn't work. And I think the reason for that is obstacle is not adding a block. Right? It's actually a block that we need to add. So, you know, this should probably be something like an add block call. Because it's not an obstacle. Right? Actually, I guess it should be this. And so there should be a way to say, like, okay, there's a block, and the blocks I don't think do connections, do they? Well, let's take a look. Let's see what we do here, because this is what we want, right? So we're just doing this. It's literally just this. So I think it'd be okay. We would just, you know, add one of these. We'd add this block with whatever the base asset was that you told us to use, right? And we would add the thing for whatever the volume was. So you'd have to give us a volume is the only thing. And I guess I don't know how that would work, right? I'm not sure where we get those volumes from. So we would call add block, we would just need the volume that you were going to use, and I guess you just have to pass that in, because I'm not sure any other way to do it. So you're going to have to do that, you know. And then the variant is passed in here, and yeah. I guess this is actually a rectangle 3 for the piece. All right. And I guess that's it. Entity, tag hash, you know, dim, offset, color, and off we go. Okay, so when we actually create that door, the door should be a add block, and we would pass, you know, the hash, and then we need the other stuff. For now, oops, we have a color that's just white, and we need to know what the volume is of the thing, which I guess we'll get because we can look at the tile contents for that. Because we're getting this crap already, like this stuff. Get volume from min z, right? So we're already doing this. For the tile. So we know which tile it is. Right? And so we really just need this thing. And it's a little annoying that there's so many of these. I don't know what that's going to do. It's kind of annoying that there's so many of these, though. Like, we got to condense this down. This should probably just be something that you get directly out of here. And you're always working with one of these. That's what it should really be. So I don't really know about that. Okay, so the volume is really the thing that we don't have here, and so you know, this is exactly what we want. We just don't actually want it to be... I mean, can't this just be like... get volume from min z, right? We want this to be relative. So we really just want the thing that's like get total volume. This is kind of just a waste of our time because this entire thing is just placing it. It's just the tile dim is like all we actually needed, right? So the volume is just that. And we don't need to do the rest of the stuff. All we need to do is make sure the wall height is correct. You know what I'm saying? So that whole thing is kind of stupid because it doesn't really matter. So I think what we want is to just say, okay, you know, we would change the height of this thing or set dim or something. We would want to be able to change the dimension of it, but only the z, right? And to make it be the wall height. But we'll deal with that in 1 second. If we just take the tile dim for now, we should be able to pass this. And when we do add block is taking the volume as the input. So that would be the end of it, right? So we would just say, okay, pass the volume, pass the volume. Right, which is that. And we just want to center it. So can we do this? Pass the tile dim. In add block, we base this around the center point. So this is actually just the dimensions of the thing. So this is the v3 dim. And so in here, if we want the radius, it would just be half times the dim. And then the center point of it is just going to be like, centered at the z base. So it would presumably just be like, 0, 0.5 times dim z, So it's just like a block that's placed at its base, wherever you happen to actually put the thing, Okay. So I don't know what that's going to do, but I feel like we should at least hack that in there for now. And then that way we can have doors that actually look like doors. We can get some art done to have a door on it or something. I don't know. And so, oh, you know what? And I don't have to hop down there every time to debug this because I can just set up the initial camera, right? Okay. So, our goal now is just to make there be a door right there, hopefully. And we can also look to see there might be doors there that are actually just sunken into the geometry. So I just wanted to check first to make sure that it wasn't a placement issue, but it doesn't look like it, right? So let's go ahead and get that working. So in add block, and let me just, like it's an ad blocker. Let me also check how we do it. We do place entity on traversable door reference. Here's the door. It's block tag wall stone. Yep. And tile dim, which is that. This is where we're placing it. There's the color. The color is just 111, and it's a piece type cube. Here's the variant. To do region, flags collide. So I feel like that actually should have worked. I'm not actually sure why it didn't. We place its position here. And presumably it is there, quote unquote, meaning I can't go through it. Yeah. So it is placed there. I just don't see it for some reason. So that's the question, is why, right? If we look in here, you can see us adding the other one. This is how this one's added. And we can look at how the entity is placed and just see if there's any... Does anyone even touch that? Nope. It just adds like ground cover and traversables. It should probably have an occluder so you can't see light from the other side. But again, since we can't actually see the thing to begin with, I'm not sure that matters. The entity P will be set when it gets placed on the traversable. So I don't know. That should work. Is there some kind of tag thing I don't understand that, like, we didn't set the tags right? Like, is there no stone wall? That could be it. Actually, you know what? That may well be it. It might be that there's only a stone floor. We should probably have a thing that if it can't find an asset, it, like, draws bright pink or something. That's probably going to be useful, like, so that we know the difference between those two things. Probably something to put on the to-do list. It's probably just that we don't have stone walls. That's my guess. And I'm right. So here's our, like, you know, our door piece. You can see that it's too high because this is the thing where we didn't set the wall height. So we'd like that to now have its Z changed. I don't know, like, I feel like we should have a math function that does that, like, sets the dimensions of a rectangle. You know what I mean? But I don't know that we do. Yeah, I don't know that we do. I don't know that I want to think too hard about it right now. So what I'll probably do is just say, yeah, you know, we got the tile dim. And we'll just say, okay, if that's the dimensions of the door dim, you know, max Z equals door dim min Z plus the wall height, you know. It's not real exciting. It's not. Oh. That's even easier. So wall height is specified in here, right? And I don't know that it gets set depending on the situation, right? And so I guess we kind of have to say, well, the wall height, quote unquote, is this thing, like full wall height. And the full wall height is 2. That way everybody uses the same arbitrary numbers that we just decided are how high the walls are. You know what I'm saying? All right. And I think that's it for today. Because I don't want to do anything fancy since we're so far over time. So, you know, there's the wall, and, you know, it looks like maybe the centering, the positioning of the wall might be slightly wrong as well, which, again, I don't know that I care about right now either. But, you know, you can clear it out now, at least. And so, yeah, for doors, again, we don't really know what we're going to do with those long term, but, you know, for now, we're just moving them out of the way. And it's going to be a problem because if they go down that far, they might block things in the other room. Like, we're going to need an actual solution for what happens with doors because that's not going to cut it, right? But that's where we're at. Okay, so I think we're good. That'll be it for today. And seems good. Yeah. All reasonable. All reasonable. Okay. Oh, that was funny. It put the... yeah, that's interesting. It put the switch down the stairs, so you would have had to hit it down there. I think that's it. I think that's it. Maybe it could actually be a gameplay feature for the door move to the house. I mean, it could be, but I doubt it. Right? Like... When plopping down furniture props, do you want to allow for pattern variations? Example, desk above, chair below, desk, lamp on the right. Another pattern on a side wall would require a completely different arrangement. Yeah, I mean, I would assume that when we actually plop down furniture, we'll have some decision about how we want to do that. But at the moment, I don't really care about furniture, so I just haven't bothered, right? Can you explain why only one switch is being added to a room? Yeah, so the problem with the switches is just that what we want to do is just look for a pattern that we can like sort of stamp down. And what's happening at the moment is that those switch patterns, they don't actually take up any placement, right? You can walk on the switches. So when you say find random open tile, it always returns the same tile because when you place this down, you don't actually occupy it, right? So that's really it. That's the only reason. And so we want to actually go code this up next weekend probably to like place down interesting tile patterns as a starting thing. You're talking about switching bodies and switching heads. Would you be able to switch to have a snake body? That would be pretty cool, especially as required to accomplish something later in the game, like using the snake body to press down on multiple adjacent buttons at the same time. So I guess the answer is I don't know. I mean, I'm not a game designer, so I don't know. But it seems like it would be fun. The problem is we don't have a really solid understanding of what it would mean, because we don't really have a solid understanding of what it means to be able to swap heads. So, we could come up with a game design way that works. And then, yeah. Because, you can't just swap heads with any arbitrary monster, otherwise then you don't have to really fight the monster, right? I mean, I guess you have to fight your body with that monster, which might be hard if you had a good... I don't know. I don't know how to, think about that. But I think, yeah, if you keep your head and you can switch to certain monsters, like maybe monsters before they die or something, before they disappear, if you beat them, they're in a dazed state temporarily where you can swap to their body instead of yours for a limited amount of time. I don't know. Sure, we can try it, but I don't know. Will you add normal maps to sprites for lighting effects? Probably not, because I don't know where I would get the normal maps from, right? Are you interested for it to be a mix of hand-authored rooms? Oh, yeah. I probably want there to be some hand-authoring and there wouldn't be hand-authoring where we specifically create a room, but we're going to create, I think, generators that are fairly specific. So it's kind of hand-authored with a limited amount of stuff, right? Oh, gameplay-wise, no, the gameplay-wise is that the tiles, you hop on the tiles while fighting the monsters. So it gives you something constructive you have to do in the room. It's not about trying to get monsters to jump on them. There probably will be some things like that in the game, because why not? But that's not, the main thing you would do. The main thing you do is try to hop on the tiles yourself while fighting. I've heard you say before that you don't believe it's good or necessary to know many programming languages because in your words programming works from first principles. I do hear all the time, though, that you shouldn't be married to a programming language and you should always use the best language to the problem. I would say I disagree. I would say I don't disagree with that, actually. What I would say is that programming is basically the same no matter what language you do it in. The mental process is, and understanding what the computer does is all you really need to know. So most of the time, it really doesn't matter what language you use, in my opinion, as long as that language isn't really hamstrung. So I wouldn't program in JavaScript most of the time because you can't really do much with it. It doesn't really work. You can't really do threading. And you can't really do SIMD very well. You just can't really use it. It forces you to go through a garbage collector. You don't really have a choice. So, there's some languages like JavaScript that you just never use unless you have to, right? But other than that, as long as you know a language that's fairly capable, that you can do most things with, C, D, Rust now seems okay, probably, although I haven't actually verified that myself. Java, probably not, because it's kind of limited. Java is kind of like JavaScript in some ways. It's not very good at letting you express things. Probably not Python. Again, very limited in what it can express. So there's some languages that I would probably stay away from because you're very limited if you use them. But any language that's like generally capable, it doesn't really matter which one you're using, right? So I would say I kind of agree. Where I might disagree with the people that you're talking about is that they think there's these huge differences between how good it is to program in language A versus B, and I think they're wrong about that. I think they drastically overestimate the actual benefits you get from these different languages, which is not to say that I don't think there could be languages that were like so good that you really do get a huge benefit from programming. I think in the future we'll have those. Right now, like people who think that like Python is way better than, C# or something, it's like they're just kind of delusional as to thinking about what they've never done any measurements to prove that, I think is usually what I would say, because it's just not true. Do you find it hard to design the engine without the concrete requirements of a specific game design? Not really. Engine code is engine code. It needs to be flexible because even if you think you know the game design, it always changes. So you can't really, hard code stuff that way anyway. Starcode Galaxies, we're shooting for May. So Starcode Galaxy hopefully will be out. The very early versions of it will be out sometime in May. Is the hope. Definitely by June something will be shipped. But it's very early, so it will be updated substantially after that. So it won't be anywhere close to final. That'll be like the earliest of early access for people who want to start in the beginner stuff. So how do you avoid overcomplicating it? I don't avoid it. You watched that today. What I do is when it gets overcomplicated, we then work on condensing it, right? Like not putting in things that you don't need. You always want to be sensible when you're programming, but you're always going to make mistakes about thinking something should go one way, and you start going and you realize it's just too unwieldy. Just stop, condense it, right? Like when you see it happening, just condense it. Nobody knows nobody knows ahead of time the right architecture ever, unless they've already done it. And so you don't really want to come at it from the standpoint of how do I not overcomplicate my code. You want to come at it from the standpoint of how do I identify complexity that doesn't need to be there and remove it. And again, it's like what we were doing today. It's like, oh, why are we storing all this stuff only to unpack it later? Like, can we just condense that down and do it directly? Can we move that stuff closer to where it's actually happening? You're asking yourself questions like that all the time, and when you see opportunities, you take them. And over time, that compacts the code back down to something usable when you've done something wrong. You know what I mean? So it's usually less about not making mistakes, because everyone makes mistakes. No matter how good you get, you're going to overcomplicate your code sometimes. So the important part is to recognize when it's got overcomplicated and then condense back down. Right, pull out that complexity, find better ways to attack that complexity when you see it happening. If I like a low-level language like C, but a syntax feature like member function, what's the solution? Well, I mean, for the literal thing you just said, the solution is C++, because you can take C and just program in C exclusively, and then when you want member functions, you just use them, right? So You mean a feature that doesn't exist? Yeah, I mean, metaprogram is really your only choice, right? Because if the feature doesn't exist in the language that you're using, you know, you've got to figure out a way to implement it yourself, right? If that's what you want. You know, ideally you luck out and there's a language that has the feature set that you want. But, you know, it's true that a lot of times these days most languages don't have most features you would want. So you're usually left unhappy because, you know, you have to make compromises. That's just programming. Someday we'll have better languages, hopefully, you know. If you have questions about Star Code Galaxy, I would highly recommend just going to the Discord. So this right here, discord.com invite Molly Rocket. Just go to this Discord, and there's a Star Code Galaxy forum. It's got pinned messages that have stuff like that. So, you know. When someone notes / to do Casey, does that mean it's a to do Casey note or a to do for Casey to do? So I don't think there's a standard for that. So I don't know. But everywhere I've ever done anything like that, and the people that I see who do it, we all tend to mean that it's something we noted. So it's not assigning someone a task. It's saying, Casey thought this, right? And then someone else knows when they look at that to do, they're like, oh, Casey thought this should be fixed. They don't think Casey's going to fix it. Now, probably if Casey thought it should be fixed, Casey is going to fix it because he's the one who wanted it fixed. But that's not usually the implication, I think. Following up on the question about programming languages, a lot of people seem to think that dynamic languages are way more expressive than non-dynamic ones in the sense that you can accomplish a lot with very little code. When you say these languages are limited, do you mostly mean they don't allow you to... Okay, so that's nonsense. It's just complete nonsense. People who think that you know, dynamic languages are more expressive than non-dynamic languages and accomplishing a lot with little code, they're just, you know, completely wrong. Just full stop. And you know, the reason they think that is because they've never actually looked at how much code they are. I mean, ask yourself a very simple question. If I go somewhere on the internet, okay? Ask yourself how much code it would take to produce this in C, assuming that you're using some kind of render library or something, you know. Because presumably, you know, or even if you had to implement OpenGL yourself and the message loop and everything, it'd be like a couple thousand lines of code, right? Well, if I actually go in here, you know, and we look at sources and we say like, well, all right, well, where's all the code? Like, let's take a look at all the code that's in here, right? This is a dynamic language. And it's not only a dynamic language, but it's a dynamic language that, like, was used as an output format, right? I'm sorry, I haven't looked at Facebook's JavaScript code in a while. I'm also not familiar with how to do this in Edge. But I just want to pull up some code, right, that's in here. I suppose I also need to go to an actual... I suppose I probably should look, I mean, you look at how much stuff is in here, but this is all stuff that they generated, so it's probably not as useful because it's tons of tiny little files. Let me take somebody who maybe didn't compress their stuff or maybe shipped it more directly. I don't know. Let's see if we can find somebody. So... let's take a look at, you know, I mean, you know, I can't even really assess it because it's all been compressed down. I can't even look at how big it actually is because they, you know, in the old days, it used to be easier to take a look at some of this stuff because they don't smush it all down like this. So it's a little bit harder to see. But just look at this. There are literally like thousands and thousands of lines of smushed down code in this website. And all it has is this. It's 2 buttons, right? Yeah, I should look for, you're right. I should, you know what? Someone just mentioned in the chat, use the pretty print. So that's a very good idea. Thank you. So look at the code. There is thousands and thousands of lines of code, and this is what they got. So, I mean, if this were 20 lines of code in JavaScript, I'd agree with you. And to a certain extent, I'm beating up on them a little unfairly, because I could probably do this in, you know, a couple hundred lines of JavaScript code, soup to nuts, actually as a library that worked or whatever, right? But if you look at how these people actually ship code, before they can ever make that statement where they have to be like, look at how easy it is to program a dynamic language. Everything they ship should be trivial. It should be like 50 lines of code for everything, for the, like, you know, for the stupid add cookie, for the, you know, the button layout, whatever. If these languages were so much more powerful, why are they thousands and thousands of lines of code to do almost nothing? Right? So, and the answer is because no, like, architecture is what determines how few code lines you have. It's not the language, really. And the architectures that they choose are so bad, you know, you end up with things like, you know, this page is probably made in, you know, Angular or React.js or one of these things. And it's like, yeah, here's, you know, 50,000 lines of code that we just shoved down your face, and all it can do is like put up a couple buttons or something, right? And then they're like, well, we program in dynamic languages because look at how convenient and easy they are, and there's so few recalls. Like, no, they're not. It's this huge, like, debugging these things must take forever trying to find out what's going on, right? And so in general, it's how sensible you code is how concise the code is. You can write a C program that does a lot of stuff in 1,000 lines of code. You can write a JavaScript program that does a lot of stuff in 1,000 lines of code. The people who sit around saying stuff like JavaScript takes less lines of code to do stuff, where's the proof? Where's the proof that they're doing so much with so little? Because they always seem to take drastically more to do drastically less. So I think people should stop making claims without metrics. You want to claim that JavaScript-like languages let you be much more compact than C? Show me this web page in less than like 50,000 lines of code or whatever the hell it's doing right now, right? So, I mean, and it gets tiresome because it's like, you know, people have these arguments, but what are they arguing about? They have nothing, they have no leg to stand on. Their stuff is terrible, it's slow, it's buggy, it's bloated, and it takes tens of thousands of lines of code to do simple things. They shouldn't be saying anything. They should be saying, the only thing that people who ship stuff like this should be saying is, we have a lot to learn. That's what they should be saying, right? They should never be advocating for anything that they're doing because it's obviously not good, right? Yeah, I'm sorry is another thing they could say. But you should do X or this is better than C is a stupid thing to say because obviously it's not. Like, you know, you obviously didn't succeed in whatever the thing is that you said you were doing, you failed. So maybe it is true that JavaScript is better than C for something, right? But you didn't demonstrate that. So you should stop talking like that until you actually go figure it out. Your intuition is worthless because this is what we got, right? So, you know, put up or shut up is another way to say it. Like, you want to make big claims like dynamic languages are better than static languages, show me, right? You should be, if it's so obvious, it should be easy to prove. And this is the opposite. This proves the opposite, if anything, right? So you're starting from you got to go uphill. You're shipping real crappy stuff. So if you want to make claims that there's something better about it, the burden's on you because your output sucks, right? Like what you're accomplishing is terrible. So you need to start making excuses for yourself, not claiming that somehow other people are making bad choices because it looks like you're the one who's making the bad choices, right? So you should start from a place of like, if you want to explain that away, go ahead, explain it away for me, right? But you got to do it with metrics. You got to prove that what you're saying is not hand waving, that you're really right, you know? Honor, it took me 400 lines of code to write a 2D plotting calculator in JavaScript. I don't know why it takes so much for a simple CRUD website, though. Yeah, I mean, and like the Starcode Galaxy front end is a web front end, so that's written in JavaScript. And it's, I use the same principles I use when I'm programming C, and it's very small, compact, and very reliable, unlike the web pages I use. Which is why I say I think how much utility, how much reliability you get out of a piece of code is almost always about your sensible architecture and not about like what you're programming in, because as far as I can tell, if you give Twitter any language, it doesn't matter what the language is, they will give you a thing that's terrible, right? It doesn't matter if you hand them JavaScript or Rust or C or D or C# or Java, the thing that will come out will be garbage, right? So I don't think it matters whether you're using JavaScript or C. It doesn't really make a difference, right? When you pick a particular task, you usually just have, a limited set of options that are things that you could use. You obviously can't use C on a web front end because JavaScript's the only thing that it will execute. Although, soon you might be able to, right? With WebAssembly, you might be able to use C. But basically, you should just pick the thing that you're most comfortable in that has the capabilities that you need, and then it's the sensible architecture that will keep the code good. It has nothing to do with the language. That's just language fetishism that doesn't really pay off these days, because most languages, at the end of the day, are just too similar, and they really don't get much leverage, All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining me for the episode of Handmade Hero. It's been a pleasure coding with you, as always. If you would like to follow along, you can always pre-order the game on handmadehero.org, and it comes with the source code so that you can play around with it. We will be back. No, well, that's not true. I will be giving a lecture for the University of, I don't know how to say the name, Twente. It's in the Netherlands, and I'm sure I will butcher their pronunciation. So I won't do it, but I'm giving a lecture on Wednesday, and you can see it's on the schedule here, right there. So if you're interested in that, it's going to be about taking a look at some work I did on optimizing a sort of distribution, a grass, plant and grass distribution system in the Witness. And it was a thing where I had something that I was supposed to take a look at that took, a minute or 2 minutes or something to complete, and I was able to optimize it down to real time. And so it's just going to be a talk about like looking at a thing that someone has created that's very slow and figuring out why it's very slow, and how when you actually remove all of the things that make it slow, it's like, potentially like 1,000 times faster, right, than it was. Because, a lot of times we don't really go over stuff like that. So I figured it would be fun to sort of go over what that looked like. So that's what's going to be. And it's at this time and at this, it'll be a light board. It'll be on the light board. So you know, it's like a stand-up kind of thing. So that's it. That'll be Wednesday. Hope to see you back here for that. And then next weekend, on Saturday again, we'll be back to programming Handmade Hero. So that's it. Have fun programming, everyone. And maybe I'll see you Wednesday for the lecture. If not, I'll see you next weekend. Take it easy, everybody.